It was not long after the school shooting that talk turned to tougher gun control laws, but does the problem go past that? And what about gender issues? I mean, it's such a complex situation, and to kind of get some answers, we are turning our attention right now to a doctor that joins us here in the studio, and you are a psychologist. Can you help us kind of put our heads around this issue? I mean, so many people want to know why. Why did this happen?
Yes, yeah. Actually, you know, that asking why, Teresa, and trying to come up with answers to why is a really normal part of coping with an horrific event like this. And what it does is it allows us to regain some sense of control and hope that we can prevent these kind of tragedies in the future. The problem with these school shootings is that we always ask the wrong questions.
And how is that?
And we get the wrong answers as a result. And as we've been listening to this morning, the answer is always guns and gun control.
Right. We zero in on that, Dr. Courtenay.
Exactly.
Like the only thing we can get our head into.
That's right. And unfortunately, then, we come up with the wrong answers. So the reason these shootings keep occurring is because we fail to ask the most important question, which is, why is it that men and boys kill with guns?
Because we're talking, it's not girls. We don't hear about young girls, teen girls doing this.
No, it doesn't.
Why is it? And so what are we doing wrong?
It doesn't happen. In fact, you know, the truth is most men and boys in this country are not violent. But it's also true that more than 9 out of 10 violent crimes are committed by men and boys. So every school shooting that's occurred, in every case, the gunman was a man, or a young man, or a boy. And 1 in 10 high school boys carries a gun to school each day. So, you know, that
1 out of 10?
1 out of 10, and that's 9 times the number of girls that do. So
what are we doing wrong?
Well, for one thing, we're not asking, why is it that girls don't carry guns to school? And why is it that boys don't have access to guns? So we don't ask those questions because we just take it for granted that boys and men use guns.
So in your research, and you know, you've devoted your life to trying and solve that puzzle, or look more into the psyche of men and boys and gun violence and so forth, but we're also talking about the socialization and how we're rearing our boys that become men.
Right.
So what are we doing wrong?
Well, that's when we ask the question correctly, and we actually ask, why is it that men and boys kill and use guns? Then we come up with a couple of pretty good explanations for that. And part of it is socialization, and the other part of it is mental health problems that go untreated. You know, we've talked a little bit more about mental health the past few days, which is great, but it's not gendered. So, you know, girls and women are depressed, and they have mental health problems too, but they don't go around shooting people.
So why the difference?
So why is it that that's the question? And part of it is then that men's mental health problems are not getting treated.
They're not diagnosed.
So we need to look at men's mental health problems kind of uniquely and understand what's unique about them. In this case, we do know that the shooter committed suicide, and there's a strong link between suicide and depression. So it's likely that Adam Alonzo was depressed, or at least not getting adequately treated. Now, that's true for most for men and boys in this country. They're much less likely to get the adequate treatment that they need than women and girls.
So how do we address it?
Well, we need to, number one, recognize that many of these men and boys are in pain and need help, and are not getting the help that they need. Our boys are crying out for help. So, and it's not just mental health care providers, and we have our own set of issues because we grew up in the same society where there's a myth that men and boys don't get mental health problems and don't get depressed. So clinicians are less likely to correctly diagnose depression in men than in women. So we need to start to understand that men and boys are in pain, and parents can do this too. Parents are less likely to recognize pain and sadness in their boys. In fact, they oftentimes misinterpret signs of sadness as anger. So we don't teach boys about pain. In fact, what we teach them is to deny pain.
To ignore it.
And ignore pain, exactly.
And suppress it, and so then therefore that happens where something horribly tragic happens like this.
That's right.
Bubbles up to the surface and it's not contained.
That's right. And you mentioned social socialization. That's another big part of this, is how we actually teach men and boys. And where men and boys learn a lot of this is through the media that they consume, the movies, the television, and the video games that they watch.
I hate video games. I know my brother's going to despise me for saying that, but anyway.
Well, that's a big part of it, and we know from analyzing those video games that they teach boys violence, and they teach boys and men that violence is not only acceptable, but it's effective. And so
It doesn't a desensitization?
it also desensitizes them to that, but it also sends a very important message that boys get away with violence, and that's what we see in these videos. Girls don't, but boys do. They get away with violence, and that it's an effective way to get what they want. So we really need to rethink how we are teaching boys to be boys. And the bottom line here really is that any answer to gun violence needs to begin with a question about gender.
Okay, excellent. I'm sure we could talk probably a very long time about this, and I want to turn our viewers' attention to the website that you have for more discussions about this and some more information on your website. And the website is themensdoc.com.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Courtenay.
It's been a pleasure,
I appreciate
Teresa.
it. We are going to turn our attention to weather.